Even by Westminster's increasingly bizarre standards, the day began with an odd tremor. By lunchtime, it had become an earthquake. And somewhere between the panicked rides down Whitehall lift shafts and the frantic phone calls to party whips, a quiet but unmistakable truth settled in. Something in the machinery of British government had snapped. It began, as these things often do, with a phone call, or more precisely, the lack of one. The monarch's weekly audience with the Prime Minister, a meeting so ritualized it had survived everything from the Blitz to the miners' strikes, was cancelled with barely an hour's notice. Not postponed, not nudged into next week. Cancelled until further notice. A phrase so chillingly vague that one senior Cabinet Office official whispered, "We all knew what it meant. This wasn't scheduling. This was a message." The Prime Minister's motorcade, already rolling through the mall, was forced into an ignominious retreat, while tourists filmed the flashing blue lights and scurrying aides. Those clips went viral before the cars were even back through the Downing Street gates. By the time ministers emerged from their offices, the phrase drifting through the corridors wasn't issue or problem. It was constitutional crisis. Delivered in that hushed, reverent tone civil servants reserve for only two things: royal displeasure and treasury cuts. Palace officials remained frostily tight-lipped, but at precisely 9:47 a.m., Buckingham Palace issued its now infamous statement. 29 terse words announcing the indefinite postponement of the audience. No elaboration. No alternative date. No polite fiction about diary clashes. For a monarchy that treats convention as sacred scripture, this was a breathtaking breach. As one constitutional scholar muttered over tea in Portcullis House, not even Churchill was turned back. Inside number 10, order completely disintegrated. Ministers were seen half-jogging across the carpet, advisors barking into phones, meetings assembled with no agenda, because no one quite knew what the agenda should be. When the press secretary emerged, white-knuckled, her voice sliding between registers, she delivered a line so painfully unconvincing that reporters exchanged glances. The Prime Minister respects His Majesty's decision. She fled the podium before a single question could be asked. And that, as one aide put it, was the moment everyone realized the wheels had come off. What followed took the story from chaos to something much darker. Sources inside the building described the Prime Minister returning from the aborted palace visit as incandescent, railing that the king had overstepped his constitutional role. One minister recounts, off the record of course, that Starmer snapped, "The Crown serves Parliament, not undermines it." Cabinet colleagues, already white with shock, attempted to coax him toward calm, but the PM reportedly delivered a blistering rebuke. "You're all weak." The room fell silent. By mid-afternoon, the crisis deepened. A smaller, more confidential meeting was convened in the Prime Minister's study. Lawyers arrived. Notes were taken. And then, unbelievably, the central question was raised. Could number 10 challenge the monarch's decision in court? A judicial review of the sovereign. Even in this era of constitutional improvisation, the idea sounded like something scraped from an alternate universe. Britain, after all, runs on an unwritten constitution, stitched together by convention, deference, and the quiet understanding that no one pushes too hard. Dragging the palace into legal combat would rip apart a settlement that has survived for centuries. Yet the fact the question was even asked shows how thoroughly Westminster had lost its bearings. Meanwhile, beyond this operatic confrontation, another crisis simmered, gentler in appearance, but morally far more searing. For years, veterans' organizations have been pleading for help. Waiting lists for care have ballooned, promises have evaporated. And while ministers argue over constitutional propriety, men and women who once patrolled Helmond or the streets of Belfast now wait months for a simple physiotherapy appointment. Take Michael Patterson, a 72-year-old former Royal Marine. He spent decades in service, including the Falklands. Now he limps through Portsmouth with a walking stick he had to buy himself. 14 months on the NHS list for a hip replacement. "I saluted the flag," he said, his voice cracking. "Now they can't even see me." He is just one of 180,000 veterans waiting, some for surgery, others for mental health care that could save their lives. And while they wait, Ministers enjoy private coverage worth thousands a year, from instant dental appointments to therapy sessions booked with the tap of an AIDS tablet. The contrast is corrosive. Voters may forgive error or misfortune, but they do not forgive hypocrisy. Then came the revelation that broke what little patience remained. Just days before the palace's cancellation, ministers quietly rejected a cross-party veterans funding proposal, £340 million to slash wait times and expand treatment for service-related injuries. Conservatives, Lib Dems, Labour backbenchers, all in agreement. But the Health Secretary said no, citing budgets, priorities indeed, because in the same week, Parliament approved £180 million for a Whitehall-wide diversity and inclusion programme, workshops, consultants, PowerPoints. No shortage of funds for bureaucracy, none for those who carried the flag into danger. Even lifelong Labour voters began calling into radio shows. "They've forgotten us," said one caller from Sunderland. "We served them. They served themselves." And into this moral vacuum stepped an image that tore through the country. A widow in Leeds describing how her husband survived IEDs, but not the 11-month queue for PTSD treatment. "He lived through Afghanistan," she whispered, "but not the waiting list." Westminster may trade in briefing wars and procedural trickery, but ordinary Britons experience the consequences. No wonder then that the king, who has spent a lifetime cultivating scrupulous neutrality, reached his own breaking point. The moment he stepped to the cenotaph, cameras live, millions watching, the country sensed something extraordinary was about to happen. His remarks, measured yet resonant with barely contained fury, cut through the political fog. "We honour those who served," he said, "those who believed Britain meant something beyond politics." He paused, then turned toward the ministerial ranks. Duty to the nation must transcend personal ambition. A royal admonition on live television. Social media exploded. The hashtag #DefendOurKing trended globally within hours. Clips of veterans wiping tears as they listened to the king went viral. A single video of Michael Patterson watching the speech racked up tens of millions of views. "He remembers us," he murmured. "The government doesn't." The political fallout was volcanic. Labour's polling collapsed by 15 points in 3 days. Among older voters, traditionally monarchy-defending and often swing-deciding, Starmer's disapproval hit catastrophic levels. Cities like Liverpool and Newcastle, Labour strongholds for generations, registered double-digit drops in support. The economic shock followed swiftly. In markets dislike uncertainty, and a Prime Minister at war with the Crown is uncertainty of the purest strain. The pound fell. The FTSE shed points like leaves in a November gale. A senior trader privately called it the worst confidence failure since Black Wednesday. Internationally, the embarrassment was palpable. At the G20 summit in Brussels, Starmer found himself awkwardly isolated in the group photo. Macron breezed past him without a nod. Germany's Chancellor redirected mid-stride. Even Justin Trudeau offered a handshake so perfunctory it might as well have been a mime. An unspoken diplomatic sanction, murmured a Whitehall source. Meanwhile, at home, Labour's internal discipline unravelled. WhatsApp groups gurgled with talk of leadership challenges. Louise Hay resigned first, declaring she could no longer serve a leader showing contempt for institutions millions hold sacred. Others followed. Rachel Reeves fell silent. Angela Rayner began courting backbenchers. And then, the leak. A document from Labour HQ outlining a strategy to test donor appetite for reducing the monarchy's constitutional role. Without debate, without public consent, not reform, not consultation, covert repositioning. The timing could not have been more ruinous. All the while, another figure watched from the wings with unmistakable relish. Nigel Farage. Reform UK banners behind him, he thundered in Birmingham about defending tradition, protecting Britain, and standing with the king. The crowd roared. His party's membership surged. Polls jumped to historic levels, neck and neck with Labour. And thus Britain, improbably, found itself edging toward a three-party standoff. Which raises the unavoidable question, can the system take it? Rumours, whispered in palace corridors and Westminster tea rooms alike, suggests the king has consulted experts on the outer limits of his reserve powers, the very powers untouched since the 1970s. Could a monarch dismiss a prime minister deemed to have breached constitutional convention? Official denials are smooth, but privately, aides sound rattled. Britain's constitutional order, that delicate web of expectation and restraint, suddenly feels fragile. Glass beneath the nation's feet. As Britain enters this fraught weekend, one question circulates from pubs to pension queues, whispered with both dread and fascination. Will Starmer survive to Monday? Or has a cancelled audience, just 29 carefully chosen words, already rewritten the course of modern British history? One thing is certain, in the shadows of Westminster and the soft-lit rooms of the palace, someone is smiling at the chaos. A man once dismissed as a protest politician. Nigel Farage has read the moment perfectly, and whatever comes next, he will not be standing on the sidelines. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as gripping as we did, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. See you in the next video.